Well, welcome everybody. This is Workshop 8, our self-care buffer zone. Can you believe that this is our last week? It's gone really fast. So we are now at the final decision point, and we're going to dig into three main topics. We're going to talk about where we invest our energy. We're also going to talk about the concept of mindful movement, just like we did with mindful eating. And then we'll wrap up with our nourish topic and explore a flexible approach to self-care and really managing our whole lives. So we really have a lot of ground to cover. So let's get going. Focused on how much. So just real quick, I want you to think to yourself, did you practice listening to your signals of satisfaction? And then what did you do if you overate? Did you come up with some strategies that you could implement in those times? But first, let's think back here to how far we've come over the last 8 weeks. So this is think, where do I invest my energy? So really hone into the idea that when you started this program 7 weeks ago, you probably didn't have a very good idea of where we'd be going with this. And think back to yourself 7 or 8 weeks ago and think about how your life was different then from how it might be now. Can you think back to where your energy was at that point? Not just your day-to-day energy that you use to kind of move yourself around, but what I really mean is when we're using the mindful eating cycle to guide our eating, where we invest our energy is really a critical piece, because where we invest our energy is really the whole point, isn't it? It's the whole point. Think about where you were investing your energy back then. So where did you invest your energy is really much more than just about exercise. Where does your energy go when you're in a restrictive eating cycle, right? Well, focusing on diets and exercises. Where does your energy go in an overeating cycle? You're thinking like, well, what energy? I don't have any. Well, think about food and what happens when you eat too much and your body now has to take that energy and store those extra calories as body fat, or the energy you take up being mad and aggravated with yourself. How many of you maybe noticed over the past 7 weeks that you have a little bit more energy and more time on your hands when you're able to eat more mindfully? So most of you have heard the question, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? Eating to live means that you eat the fuel that's necessary to live your life to the fullest. It also means that food has less significance, which frees up your energy to do everything else you want to do in your life. A lot of us get in this thought process that when we get it all under control, or when we lose this weight, or when we finally figure it all out, then we'll live that life that we deserve. When we postpone our lives and put them off until we achieve, some arbitrary weight goal or BMI or pant size, or maybe even a financial status or position at work, when we keep postponing our lives for something outside of us, something external to us, then we create a vacuum. We create a hole. And for those of us that use food to fill up those holes, we end up using food over and over and over again. And then we wind up in that vicious cycle, that eat, repent, repeat cycle. So today's final workshop is about trying to move away from our lives being about trying to reach, again, some arbitrary measure of success. And it's really about learning to use the fuel we need to go ahead and live that life now. It's about using all the new skills you've learned to free you up to spend your energy on building optimal health. So ironically, the more we do that, the less we have to think about our food, because it kind of starts to take care of itself. So what is optimal health? And I'm sure you've seen various versions of this before. It's really not that the idea, it's really about the idea that the health is not necessarily a number on a scale. It's not about a blood cholesterol level. It's not about a good checkup. It's not even about being able to walk or run or whatever. Optimal health is your optimal state of wellness in all things, body, mind, heart, and spirit. It's about finding a harmony in all those things and having the flexibility to realize that sometimes we're focusing more on our body, like when we're sick. And other times it's more about our emotional health. but there's flexibility and harmony and balance that we're taking care of all of these things to one degree or another. Optimal health does not mean perfect health. In no way, shape, or form does this circle here represent something you have to be doing perfectly. Instead, it's the best health that you can have given your current opportunities and limitations. It's your optimal health at this present time. You may have things going on that aren't quite up to what you desire, but nevertheless, it's the best circumstance given maybe the situation that you face right now. That's the flexibility part again. Optimal health is a journey. It's not a destination. And think about this, optimal health. Can someone with cancer have optimal health? Of course. How? Well, they could be receiving good medical care. They could be practicing good self-care. They could have a really good support system in place and a positive attitude. And in that case, they are under their current circumstances and their conditions, practicing the most optimal health they have available. So spend some time thinking about, what does it mean to you to have wellness? What can you do to invest in your health? And I want to remind you that that doesn't mean, and it's not intended to be some sort of to-do list that you have to come up with. Just jot these ideas down in your workbook. Then you can use that information to create an action plan at the end of this workshop. So in our workshop tonight, we're going to focus on each of these 4 areas. And we're going to start to explore some ways we can begin to care for ourselves. Some may be very obvious to you, either things you're already doing or things you don't want to do. And some of them may be new ideas or new possibilities of things you've never considered. Or some may be things you've been postponing until you reach that arbitrary goal I talked about. So my suggestion is that you get a blank piece of paper, if you can, and draw this circle here. And as we go through the workshop, just jot down ideas that come to you. There may be a lot, so listen to the ones that really have possibility for you. Something jumps out and speaks to you, jot that down. Things that are interesting to you in some way. Capture as many ideas as you can as we go through this. And then when we get to the end, we'll focus just on a few of them. I don't want this to become a big to-do list. Again, this is about finding the things that are right for you. So first, let's start with physical wellness. So this is body. I want you to focus on what you can do to take care of your physical body. And I want you to really focus on some of the basics, because we've gotten so focused on exercise and nutrition that sometimes we're missing the bigger picture of physical wellness. So certainly there are physiological needs, what your body needs to be healthy. There are safety needs. This is important because for some people, they are not in a safe environment. And until they are, the other things aren't going to be that important. Their safety then is their priority and should be their priority. Then there are health needs, perhaps the things your doctor or healthcare provider has shared with you or that you know from your own family history. There's nutrition needs, obviously. Fitness needs, which we've talked quite a bit about over the last few weeks. Restoration needs. This is one of those that many of us put on the back burner because we're so busy that we don't think we have time to rest or sleep or relax. That seems kind of like a luxury to us instead of a necessity, but it truly is a necessity. If we're going to take care of any of the other areas of our lives, we have to pay attention to our needs for restoration. And then, of course, there are physical and sexual needs. So let's take this list and really think of which things you can do to invest in your physical health. So if you have your sheet of paper, you have your circle, highlight or circle the things that maybe you jotted down that kind of jumped out for you or that you feel particularly drawn to. Or go back through this workshop again and pay attention to it. So we're going to go through this in a couple of other manners. So now you kind of have an idea of what this activity looks like. So as we go through, you can use the opportunity to write down ideas. So let's think about this a little bit further. Let's go through a few of the specific ideas. And I'm sure you wrote down or thought of a bunch of them, but let's talk about a few of them. So establish a safe and pleasant physical space. So let me just mention, I mentioned safety already, but it's really valuable to create a space in your home that's really comfortable for you. This is super important. particularly if you have a small space or if you have a lot of chaos around you because of other people or things going on. Even if it's a corner, having a little space that has things in it that make you feel good, having that space that really calms you. That can be your food-free zone, maybe somewhere where you go so you can relax and reconnect is really so important. Take care of your health needs, like get a checkup, get those labs done, take your meds as prescribed. Addressing our health needs is one of those things sometimes we avoid until we lose weight or because we don't want to get lectured at or for any other reason. It's really critical that you have a doctor that you feel like you're in partnership with. And if that's not possible, then you need to set boundaries with them or find a new doctor perhaps. Avoiding going to the doctors based on any of these above reasons here or because you don't like their personality is going to have ramifications on you in the long run, not on your doctor, but on you. So practice good health self-care for health needs. Eat fresh, healthful, and interesting foods. We talked a lot about that. Try new recipes, experiment, engage in enjoyable physical activities. Enjoyable physical activities and exercise. Emphasis on that enjoyable part, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it. Get rest and adequate sleep. This comes up for a lot of people as one of their big needs. This is a huge issue and one that we really know from research that rest is really important for us. I will mention that if you have any symptoms of sleep apnea, then you really need to see a doctor. But for everyone else without sleep apnea, there's lots of tips on this. By not exercising too close to bedtime, not taking your iPad to bed with you, not taking your to-do list to bed with you. Like write it all down, get it out of your head before you go to bed. Having a dark, cool room to sleep in is frequently helpful. You'd sleep much better that way. It is natural for all of us to have difficulty sleeping from time to time, or maybe difficulty waking up frequently. So I will share this with you a little bit. I learned this tip from Dr. May, and I use it whenever I have difficulty sleeping. And it might be in your book. Like when I have a lot going on in my life or in my head, and I find myself waking up frequently with my mind buzzing around, I was kind of skeptical at first when I heard it because I thought, oh, this kind of seems a little too simple. But let me tell you, it really works. At least it really works for me. So remember, we've talked about this before, your mind can only really concentrate on one thing at a time. So what I do is I count backwards, but not just simply by ones or something. I choose any number to count backwards from 100. I start at 100 and I pick some number to count backwards by. So I'll usually choose some random number like 3 or 4 or 6 or something like that. I know it seems like there would be a lot of thinking invested in doing this. And just to hear me talk about it, you might be like, yeah, right. How am I supposed to fall asleep while I'm busy doing math? But I'm telling you, it works. If I don't give my brain something to do, then it starts working instead on my latest problem, or it invents problems, or it starts to predict problems. You know what I mean? When you wake up and your mind's just swirling around right away. So I give my brain a job instead. And honestly, this really quiets my brain. I always pick a small number to count backwards by, and a number that I'm already familiar with. So I don't choose like 2 or 5 or something like that because it's easier to use those numbers. I have never gotten all the way to 0 before falling back asleep. So I think the lowest maybe I've gotten was into the 30s somewhere. Now, there have been a few nights where I've woken up several times in that particular night, and I have to pick different numbers each time because I kind of start to memorize the pattern. Oh, I don't know, somehow fast like that. So anyway, I choose different numbers so that I can keep it interesting and keep my brain engaged. And so when you wake up in the middle of the night, the minute you're aware you're awake, start at 100 and start going back by whatever number you've chosen. After a while, you might need to change it up once you've done this. If you start to memorize all those patterns, I personally haven't gotten there yet, but you can also think of all the states alphabetically. You can make a fruits and veggies list alphabetically, like avocados, bananas, cucumbers, dates, so on. Some of the letters are a little more difficult to come up with food. So So, but anyway, this kind of gives you some ideas of ways, because so many people do frequently struggle with falling asleep or staying asleep, waking up often. So anyway, this kind of trains your brain. This activity trains your brain that as soon as you start that little routine, it means you're going back to sleep. Your brain knows that that's what you're getting ready to do. And pretty soon it's working like a charm. So there's obviously lots of other ideas on the internet you can look up, right? So that's just a little side note, something you can consider trying. So back to physical self-care. What about giving and receiving physical affection? A touch, hugs, sex, but taking a hot bath or a long shower, getting a massage, a manicure, pedicure, a facial, but a spa day. Now that might mean going out for a spa day, or it might mean creating a spa day for yourself in your own home. Spending time in nature, walking, hiking, camping, or simply sitting and just absorbing your environment. Let's switch gears and talk about health of the mind. This is intellectual wellness. Let's really focus on all the different things that deal with the mind. So we've got thoughts. A lot of it involves our thoughts. I know we have spent a lot of time talking about thoughts or thinking about thoughts, and that's really important because our thought life creates our reality oftentimes. What you think about might not actually happen, but we certainly can feel bad or feel good depending on the thoughts we've chosen to focus on. So intellectual health is how you think, but it's also so much more. Intellectual health is growth. It's stimulation. The brain needs to be stimulated. It's creativity. Sometimes we focus on the hard logical work, but the brain loves to be creative also. It means challenging. Our brains love a little challenge, a puzzle to work on, or something to work out or to build. So what can you do to invest in your intellectual health or in the health of your mind? Take a moment to jot down a few things for yourself that you thought of that would work for you. And here's a quick thing to consider. Sometimes your daytime job might require a lot of mental energy and you come home with like zero brain energy left, so to speak. So in that case, it's a great idea to give that part of your brain a break and instead tune into your creative side, which might be simply listening to music or playing music or maybe painting or something else that stimulates that part of your mind. Or balance your intellectual energy with other forms of energy, like exercise or something like that. So the specifics of changing our mind, recall the TFAR, right? The circle here. Your thoughts lead to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which then lead to your results. And with repetition, our thoughts become beliefs. And we kind of carry out this chain reaction without even thinking about it. We don't even have to examine those thoughts, right? And then pretty soon, we have a habit. And we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we may not like our results, but what do? Is frequently we keep trying to change our actions without really getting to the beliefs and the thoughts that are driving those actions and changing those instead. For example, are your thoughts or your self-talk negative or positive? We're making a choice all the time. That's what the brain does. It thinks all the time, but you have a choice about which of those thoughts you're going to focus on or choose. If you focus on the negative thoughts, you're more likely to get negative results. Are your thoughts powerless or powerful? So an example would be, I can't do anything about it. That's powerless. Powerful is saying instead, I have a choice in this matter. Sometimes it might be as small as saying, I don't like the way it is right now, but I'm going to choose it anyway because it's easier for me right now. Rather than focusing on the powerlessness of the situation, simply acknowledging that we've chosen to stay in that situation because it's just easier right now is a powerful thought. Are your thoughts self-defeating or are they affirming? Are they outdated or forward thinking? Are you focused on the past and reliving your past and reacting over and over and over again based on past evidence? Or are you living in this moment and allowing yourself to think about the possibilities and the way that things could be instead of the way things were? Are your thoughts generalities or are they specific? See, sometimes we've had challenges and we get into this thought process, this mantra, my life is so hard, my life sucks, because maybe one thing is out of balance instead of being specific. Maybe there's one area of my life that I really wish was going better. But hey, the rest of my life is actually going pretty great right now. That's a difference between generalizing and being more specific with your thoughts. Are your thoughts limiting or growth oriented? And then are they problem focused or solution focused? Are you focusing on fixing things or are you focused on what's wrong? As a result, what feelings do your thoughts evoke? Again, remember TFAR. How do you feel as a result of these kinds of thoughts? And then what actions or behaviors are likely to result from those feelings? And then what results do you get? So go through this and think about this a little bit more. How are your thoughts with regards to, negative, positive, so on and so forth. And see if you can kind of determine what that TFAR cycle looks like when your thoughts are negative. What happens to your feelings? What happens to your actions? What happens to your results? And then the opposite. Your thoughts are positive. What happens to your feelings, your results, or your actions, and then your results. So how are you stimulated intellectually? Logical, structured, detailed, or are you creative, abstract, and random? What types of accomplishments make you feel fulfilled? What part of your brain do you use most in your daily life and your everyday job? Your logical or your creative brain? And then what else can you do to stimulate your brain? So let's look at some more of these kind of ideas and strategies. Examine your priorities, set your goals. You could read interesting or challenging books or classic works. You could learn something new, maybe a new skill, a new language. Do brain teasers, play challenging games, be creative. Use art, music, crafts, hobbies. Visit museums or other novel places. Take classes or study areas of interest. And this is so easy nowadays with so many online education opportunities and frequently free lectures and programs that you might be able to look up at your local colleges. Participate in stimulating discussion groups, maybe join a book club. Explore occupational opportunities, either maybe at your current job or at another place, or maybe explore a whole different field. Travel or explore new areas. And this does not have to be far away. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Check out your own area. Many of us have never played tourist in our own hometown. Moving on here, emotional wellness. This is a big area and can be challenging if we've been struggling with food at all. And emotional wellness is really about embracing the full spectrum of emotions. It's not about being happy. Believe it or not, that would kind of lead to a dull existence and not give us the full experience of emotions that we really need in our life. So embrace the full spectrum of emotions. Emotional wellness includes being able to identify and cope with stress and feelings. This is a big statement. If you grew up where feelings were pushed down or overexposed, like, angry, yelling, you might have residual difficulty dealing with identifying emotions or really knowing how to handle them. If that's you and if that's the case, seek help for that and learning, have somebody help you figure out how to identify and cope with those feelings. Managing stress more effectively, certainly part of emotional wellness. It's not about not ever having stress. That's just not practical. But it's about learning how to manage it better. Address or let go of old hurt and resentment. In other words, clean out that refrigerator, so to speak. Deal with it or let it go. Let go of old issues so you can make room for new good stuff. Seek balance. Learn to say no and knowing your limits. You don't have to be a people pleaser. You don't have to do something just because someone asked you to do it, even if you might be flattered by their request. You might have to say no to more things in order to keep your own life in balance. Nurture yourself. This isn't something you do when everything else is done. It has to be a priority. It needs to be a priority. And then, of course, cultivating healthy relationship is a super important part of emotional wellness. So now think of some ways that you can, some things that you can do to take care of yourself. So what are ways of transferring emotional energy from the inside to the outside where you can deal with them? Now, emotions are just that. They're just energy. They're really energy. And if you've yelled at your kids or laughed out loud, you know their energy. You can feel it. Sometimes we stuff them down, you know, the ones that don't really make us feel very good. They're not bad or negative emotions. They're just energy. And that energy gives us information. They might feel bad or they might feel negative, but the emotion itself isn't. But when you're experiencing an emotion and you push it down, that energy doesn't go away. It gets lost in us. It might get trapped in your shoulders. It might get trapped in your hips. You might have GI problems. Maybe you have headaches. That energy that you stuff down and you don't release gets trapped inside your body. So what are some ways we could release some of that emotional energy and get it from the inside where it's causing problems for us to the outside where we can express it, feel it, release it, and let it go? So some ideas might be any of these here: drawing, crying, screaming into a pillow or screaming in your car, talking to a friend or a counselor, journaling. These are ways to take those emotions that you have bottled up and find productive ways to get them out and let them go. So other than things that we've already come up with, what are some other ideas of things you can do to invest in your emotional health? Jot down ones that sound like they'd work for you, or think of others. Here's just a couple of other ideas, a little different. Express gratitude, right? Have a gratitude attitude. Look for the positive. Practice forgiveness. Get extra support from a counselor, like I said. Listen to motivational speakers or people who inspire you. About random acts of kindness done for yourself and for others. Buy fresh flowers. If anybody does that, I have a girlfriend who buys flowers every Sunday. Always has fresh flowers. It makes her feel emotionally happy. So these are just some other ideas of things that you can do to invest in your emotional health. So as a recap here, we talked about some of this, but let's just roll through it again. So we need to release emotional energy that we've stuffed and we've kept and we're hanging on to. We need to get it out somehow. So some of the ways in a productive manner, right? So journaling, drawing, crying, screaming, talking to a friend or advisor. Spend quality time with family and friends. Build intimacy with your significant other. After a while, we kind of start taking relationships for granted and they start to become a little superficial. So what are some things you can do to get a little deeper with your partner? Practice effective communication. This is a skill set. Not all of us have good communicators as parents. So, you know, where can you go to learn about these things? There's books, classes, other things to try to help you if you need more effective communication. Set appropriate boundaries assertively. This is understanding that some people in your life need heavier boundaries than others. Some people you need to keep at an arm's distance. You need to give more space between you and them. Are there people in your life that you're letting in too close? Or are there people in your life that you're holding back too far? So read or listen to self-help and self-improvement materials or attend like other workshops like this one or this one again. You can do relaxation techniques in order to be able to manage stress better. Practice forgiveness, not just with other people, which we're much better at, but also with yourself. You've probably all heard the saying that being unforgiving is like drinking poison every day and expecting the other person to die. So we sometimes continue to bathe ourselves in that hurt, and that other person has just gone on living their lives, and we're still in the same pain. Forgive, let it go. Clean out the refrigerator. This is the idea of letting that old stuff go so that you have room for the new, fresh stuff. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Find people that it's safe to be with, people that it's, that you can show your true self to. Let your guard down with. Doesn't have to be a bunch of people, 1, 2 people that you can really be vulnerable with. Seek counseling if needed, and then parent yourself a little more effectively. And we're going to talk about that right now. So this is the concept here that we're going to discuss for a little bit called self-parenting. There's much more about this in your book, but in essence, as adults, we have to parent ourselves. Think about this in terms of how parents parent young children, or even if your own parents made mistakes. You can choose more effective ways of taking care of yourself. So let's think about how parents parent. So how does a permissive parent act? And then what are the results of that permissiveness? So permissive parents are indulgent. They're lenient. They may be spoiling or inattentive. This is the parent who's got the kid yelling in the next aisle, "Mom, mom, mom, I want this. Mom, mom, can I have this? Mom, mom." And you're like, "Hang tough, lady, hang in there." And she's like, "Fine, just stop bugging me." Okay. They give in again and again because they either maybe don't want to go through the difficulty of setting boundaries with that child, or because they have fear that that child will reject them in some way. But there are reasons why they do it, and there are consequences. So what are the results of this type of parenting? Well, the child lacks boundaries and then frequently winds up doubting that he's really loved. He might even go through life expecting others to meet his needs. And then there's the harsh parent. So we're in the bubble over here on the right with the harsh parent. They're overly strict and punishing. It has to be perfect or it's not good enough. If it's not done right, they might withhold their approval or affection for that child. So frequently love and acceptance are conditional on the child behaving as expected and being, quote, perfect. As a result, that child over time may become fearful or angry. This child oftentimes may become overly obedient, maybe even people-pleasing initially, but may become rebellious later on. In between these two parenting styles is the firm but loving parent. They set reasonable, clear boundaries, but they allow the child to make mistakes and then still support and love them no matter what they do or what happens. So what do you think the results of that type of parenting are? Usually these kids, they don't give up at the first sign of difficulty. They have a positive self-esteem. They consider consequences of their actions, and they're willing more often to take risks in order to grow. So how can you parent yourself more effectively? So obviously we need to self-parent ourselves, and that's what we've been learning over these past 7 weeks. If you've been overly harsh with yourself regarding physical activity or your eating or anything else in your life, and if you beat yourself up or tell yourself you're not good enough and tell yourself that until you change, you're not lovable, you're being overly harsh with yourself. And that creates rebellion and rejection and poor feelings. It does not result in positive behaviors. Likewise, if you're overly permissive with yourself, if you don't set some boundaries, if you don't set some goals with your physical activity, if you don't pay attention to your nutrition or set goals for some of the other things we've talked about, you can end up feeling like you're not really that important, that it doesn't really matter what you do. And then you won't feel as good as a result. So self-parenting is all about being less harsh, but setting firm and clear boundaries with yourself. And when you make a mistake, learn from it. Take the lesson from it and move on and do things a little bit differently next time. So lastly, let's talk a little bit about spiritual wellness. Spiritual health may include religion, but it's more. So what defines you? Your accomplishments and possessions, or your character and personal attributes? Where do you find your identity? Do you have a sense of purpose or direction in your life? Spiritual wellness is knowing that there is something greater than yourself. Maybe for you, that's a connection and a relationship with God, or a different higher power, or believing there's something greater. It's a connection with others, knowing that we're all interconnected and we're not alone. It's about unconditional love and acceptance. It's about contribution. It's about having a purpose for your life, whatever that purpose is. It's about discovering joy and peace. Joy and peace are always there, but spiritual journeys are often about discovering it, about finding it, and knowing how to identify it, and then find it over and over and over again, because none of us walks around all joyful and peaceful all the time. We need to know how to rediscover it each and every moment. So in what ways can you invest in your spiritual health? Again, think or listen to some of these ideas and write down what feels right for you. Be fully present. Practice mindfulness. Pray, meditate, or practice yoga. Visit your place of worship or find one. You can read meaningful, inspirational works. Spend time alone and quiet. Seek solitude and connect with nature. You can write in a personal journal. That's not for everybody, but for some people, that's very helpful. To define your guiding principle and have an attitude of gratitude. Practice kindness, again, self and others. Serve and contribute to others. So that's what spirituality is. It might be church or synagogue to you, or it might just be being outside. Wherever you find joy and peace, that's spirit. So what does it mean to have abundance? For some, this is what spirituality is all about. It's that belief that there is enough, that you're enough, that there's plenty, that you don't need to live in fear and hold on, that there's enough money, there's enough time, there's enough love, there's enough food. The more that you can live in abundance and really truly believe and feel in your heart that there's enough, you don't have to live a small life. It gives you the ability to live a big life. When you use abundance thinking instead of scarcity thinking in other areas of your life, you'll far more be able to see the possibilities. Since there's more than enough, the more you give, the more you'll receive. So let's take a second here and take a couple deep breaths. And look at your list, or pay attention to what's in your head. And I want you to pick one thing. Just one thing out of anything we talked about that is next for you. What is the one thing you're going to focus on next? Is any one area calling for some attention in your life? Remember, the substance of one aspect of optimal health cannot create the substance of another, though. In other words, no matter how much you achieve at work, it will not meet all of your emotional needs. No matter how fit you become, your physical health will not compensate for your spiritual needs. So did one activity or another speak to you? Perhaps maybe the smaller the thing, the better. The easier, the better. Pick one thing that inspired you from tonight's workshop. If it's kind of big, then break it into small steps to figure out how you can get started. How can you use what you've created by moving away from thinking and talking about food all the time? How can you use that energy, that extra energy you've created? Since you've moved away, you're not spending so much time thinking about food and energy. Use that energy instead to care for your body, mind, heart, and spirit. What can you do? And then create a very short but very specific action plan for putting that idea into motion. Okay? So this section, we are going to kind of reorganize the order. We're going to do our live section now and focus on nourish at the end. So in this section, live on your own terms. This is really about mindful movement. Moving away from exercising for the purpose of simply burning calories to finding the right fit for movement in your life. which ultimately will lead to really finding real joy in it if you're not currently feeling that way about it. So as you know, we spent a lot of time in the past few workshops talking about eating mindfully. In other words, with intention and attention. Mindful movement is the same idea. It's choosing and doing physical activity with intention and attention. Using this strategy with your movement will help you discover physical activity that's both challenging and enjoyable, and help you appreciate your body's capacity to become stronger and healthier. So, moving with intention. Be purposeful when you choose your activities. Choose activities that suit your personality and your mood. You may have a general exercise personality, but you may find you need or want something different. So say you really enjoy lifting weights. You may find that you need to intentionally spend some time stretching. Maybe that's something different that you need. Choose activities that meet your body's needs. That's what I was just talking, What does your body need? Do you need stretching? Do you need to build up your cardiovascular system? Do you need to increase your strength or your endurance? What do you need? And move with the goal of feeling better when you're finished than you did when you started, right? This sounds familiar. So the bottom line is to feel better. So maybe you need to do more than you've been doing. Maybe you need to do less. Maybe you need to experiment with other things if you're feeling bored with your current routine. And then moving with the attention. This is about paying full attention to what you're doing. So be attentive during your activities. Become aware of your surroundings. Right? Notice the physical sensations going on in your body. Try to not have an out-of-body experience while you're exercising. Pay attention to your body. Noticing the thoughts and feelings that come up during your activity or your exercise. Sometimes we get caught in a thought like, oh, this is too hard. I hate this. And then we get caught up into this whole chemical storm in our body, which causes us to feel bad and then proves our original thought. Again, remember the whole TFAR thing here. Listen to your body's cues about intensity or discomfort or fatigue. If it feels too intense, back off a little. If it feels uncomfortable, notice what's going on in your body at that time. If you're feeling a little bored, crank it up a little. And one of the most important things is to appreciate your body. Appreciate its stamina, its flexibility, its strength, wherever it is right now. With our past relationship with food and the never-ending cycle of overeating and dieting, we often get stuck and trapped in thoughts and feelings that our body has betrayed us. We feel like our body doesn't do what it should, that it doesn't look like we've been told it should. And this starts to cause a disconnection from our body, almost from like the neck down. So celebrate the successes in what your body is doing to help you, and then enjoy the reconnection with your body. It'll become easier over time, and you'll get to watch your body transform both in how it feels, most importantly, and then how it looks. So doing what you love is just like eating what you love. So back in workshop 5, while we were studying the what decision point and the mindful eating cycle, you learned to ask yourself these 3 questions. What do I want to do? What do I need to do? What do I have to do? These same questions can help you choose the best activity for yourself when you're thinking about exercising. Now, recognizing your exercise personality is really going to help you establish a fitness plan that's enjoyable and sustainable. Remember the story about the sailboat, the powerboat, and the raft I talked about several sessions ago? Well, which personality are you? And if you're not really sure, experiment with lots of different types of things, and you might start to discover what your personality is. In your book, there's a exercise personality quiz, I think in chapter 24, that'll help you narrow down the kinds of things you might want to consider when you're looking for activities that you can really enjoy. So over time, as you become more active and more mindful about yourself, you're likely to learn a little bit more about why you exercise, when you like to exercise, what you like to do for exercise, how you prefer to exercise, how much you like to exercise or how often, and where you prefer to exercise. And then as a little side note, maybe who you like to exercise with, if anybody. So moving mindfully is all about being fully present. Mindfulness during your activity increases your awareness of your body, which is then likely to decrease your risk of injury because you're paying attention, and decrease your risk of feeling bored. And then it increases your enjoyment and optimizes the time that you've invested. And then most importantly, making that mind-body connection during exercise has a really calming, meditative effect that carries over into just other aspects of your life. Final section of this final session. It's our nourish section. We're going to talk about a flexible approach to self-care. And at this point, you may be asking yourself, okay, what now? You may even be a little bit concerned that you'll go back to your previous habits, since that's probably what happened when you went off diets in the past. But this isn't a diet. So there's nothing to, quote, go off of. This process was really about teaching you how to be in charge. So what do you do when you get off a track? And you will. Unlike dieting, which gets harder and harder over time, learning to eat mindfully becomes easier and easier with practice. Simply choose to use every opportunity to learn more about yourself and why, when, what, how much you eat, and where you invest your energy. Don't expect yourself to be perfect. It isn't possible. And it's not even necessary. You're in charge. So whenever you recognize that you're off track, notice which decision point you're in the mindful eating cycle, and then choose the next decision that you can make. So what we've been learning is about managing your eating more mindfully and in a more flexible manner. So some of the key points to this, or if you'll call it a lifelong approach, is mindful eating does become easier with practice. At first, it might seem difficult after years of thinking in terms of dieting, or it might seem like you have to think about this all the time. And that's probably true. Anytime you're learning something new, and this is still new, it requires more of your attention and it feels more awkward and challenging. The temptation then for a lot of us is to just give up and be like, this is too hard, or I don't get it, or I don't know if this is really working. And I totally get that. It's different. And so it might feel awkward, but unlike dieting, which gets harder and harder over time. I mean, at first it's great, right? You get all jazzed up about your new diet. But then with each passing day and each passing year and each new diet, it gets harder and harder. You feel more and more deprived, and it seems like you spend more energy now to get even less results. So unlike that, learning to eat mindfully actually becomes easier and more natural with practice. Pretty soon you might notice that you don't even notice that you're being mindful. It becomes such a natural way that you are that you'll start using mindfulness in many other aspects, different ways in your life. You might take a deep breath before you start on something. You might notice your surroundings more easily when you walk into a room. You're in charge, which means you don't have to be in control. This is really important to emphasize. When we're in charge, we're making decisions. Sometimes the decision is, I'm not hungry and I'm eating anyway. That's okay, it's still deciding. You do not have to control everything, and you really can't anyway. So for most people, that control, that pursuit for control is really a frustrating and fruitless pursuit, and winds up like manifesting itself in your relationship with food, maybe creating a lot of pain. As soon as you realize you can't control all of those things, you'll be able to let it go. Then you might realize you aren't really out of control, but instead you're consciously in charge. Please, please do not turn this into a diet. Please don't do it. You can't go off this like you can go off of a diet. It's so easy to turn it into a diet and think, oh, I was bad today, or I didn't ask if I was hungry, or I wasn't hungry and I ate anyway, or I'm so bad for overeating, right? You can't do this wrong. There's no good or bad. It's just doing and noticing. And in fact, the minute you notice you were mindless, you become mindful. You don't need to be perfect. It isn't possible. It's not necessary. Practice parenting yourself with those loving boundaries. Listen to your hunger cues. Build a strong foundation of nutrition information, and then choose among all foods freely. That kind of recipe allows you to eat in a manner that nourishes your body, mind, and soul. And then when you make a mistake, don't miss the lesson. It's not if you make a mistake, it's when you make a mistake. Making mistakes is just part of the process. It's part of being alive. You will do things that you regret. But by asking, why did I make that choice? You might be able to gain some new insight that you can use to then be able to make different choices in the future. And whenever you find yourself off track, just return to the mindful eating cycle. If 2 or 3 days or weeks or 2 or 3 months from now, you're sitting there and you think to yourself, that thing was pretty cool. I really like that. But I wonder why or how I got to the point of not doing it anymore. And you don't know where to start. Just simply go back to asking yourself, am I hungry, before you eat? That one simple question will remind you of your body's needs, your emotional needs, and start to identify what's happening here. Resist the temptation to slip into diet thinking, oh, I'll get back on track tomorrow. Instead, just start the decision point with why, and ask yourself, am I hungry? So exploring the mindful eating cycle real briefly, if you find you're having difficulty, whether it's in a day or a week or a year or in a meal, just looking back at that mindful eating cycle and then asking yourself some questions about why. You can ask yourself, was I in an instinctive eating cycle? Was I in a restrictive eating cycle? Was I in an overeating cycle? So let's see, you might have started eating because you were hungry and may have even selected really tasty, healthy food. However, if you became distracted and began to overeat, you could redirect yourself as soon as you noticed what you're doing. When you're aware of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, you can choose to return to instinctive eating at any point along this cycle. Just determine where you are in the decision points and then make that switch when you become aware of it. Now, when did I feel like eating? If you get off track, these are questions for yourself. When did I feel like eating? Was I actually hungry? Was I hungry enough to eat? Sometimes we're only a little bit hungry and then we feel miserable when we're done because we only were a little bit hungry. And remember, that only takes a little bit of food. Was I too hungry? Did I overeat because I was, low blood sugar and just did not care? Response to a trigger. Did I consider my choices? Did I consider my options of eating anyway, or redirecting my attention, or meeting my true needs? You know where all this information is, right? Once you determine which decision point you're struggling with, this is all in your book. So when you can determine that you're struggling at a certain decision point, go back to that chapter. Read a little more information about which part of the cycle seems to be tripping you up more than the others. What did you eat? Did you choose food that you wanted, or did you deprive yourself because you were thinking you shouldn't be eating it for whatever reason? Did it taste good? Sometimes we eat food that doesn't even taste good because we're looking for, some sort of satisfaction and we're not getting it out of the flavor. Were you feeling guilty for some reason? Had you been feeling deprived of a certain type of food? How did I eat? Was I being mindful? Was I enjoying my food? Was I allowing myself to be distracted, or was I eating fast? For some reason, was I eating secretly? Was I hiding my eating for some reason? Did I check in while I was eating? Remember we talked about that speed bump? Sometimes we start out totally mindful and then it just happens and we've just flaked out, right? Because we've done it so many times. How much did I have on my plate? Did I have too much? Maybe there was too much and I was overwhelmed by it, or it didn't seem like I was eating so much because there was so much on my plate. Did I create that speed bump? Was I trying to subconsciously earn my dessert? Or was I trying to get my money's worth? Or maybe it was free and I was trying to get my money's worth. Where have I been investing all my energy? Have I been living a balanced life? Are my physical needs being met? Am I getting enough physical activity, enough sleep, enough water? Are my intellectual needs being met? Are my emotional needs being met? Are my spiritual needs being met? This all fits together, and the more we look at the big picture, the whole eating cycle, the more it all begins to fall into place. You'll know if you hear people talking about mindful eating out there in the world around you, and what you hear them talk about is like, spending more time with their meal, eating slowly, savoring food. You'll know that they are only experiencing this from a superficial place. See, this is about the whole process of eating, all the way from meeting our body's needs to use energy to live our best life. It is not just about the sit down and the eating part itself. This is about the whole cycle and everything that goes into it in order for us to meet our needs. So let's see, hopefully you have your workbook out or a sheet of paper or something. And this is where I need you to have that out, because we're going to do a little activity to see where we've come. So see this chart here. I want you to draw a horizontal line that you see going from neglect on the far left side to self-care on the far right. And I want you to think about where you were on this line when you started this program, way back 7 weeks ago. Were you neglecting yourself? You're neglecting yourself when your decisions ignore or disregard your best interests. So examples might be eating high cholesterol foods frequently when you have a history of heart disease, or eating too much before bed, even though you know it's going to give you heartburn. Or in the extreme, neglect can even be abusive. Or were you practicing self-care? Or maybe even extreme self-care. Maybe you were so focused on everything, exercising the right amount, eating the right things, thinking all the time about your physical health. Now, think about where you are 7 weeks ago and draw a little hash mark on the line where you were when you started. Now, where are you now? Where are you right now compared to then? Now let's draw the vertical line. At the top is flexible, and at the bottom is rigid. Flexibility allows you to adapt to any situation. And another way of thinking about flexibility is freedom, meaning you can make any decision you want at any given time. But you can be so flexible that you're almost permissive, like we talked about in self-parenting. So flexible that you're really not paying attention. You're just like, whatever, you don't plan ahead, you don't shop, whatever, just happens. Now at the other end, at the bottom, is rigid. The other extreme is rigid. It has to be perfect. It has to be this way. If it's not this way, it's no good. Rigid decision making is strict with no room for error or unexpected detours. When you try to follow a diet rigidly, for example, you strive to be perfect without making any mistakes or ever going off the plan. So where were you on this line between rigid and flexible 7 weeks ago? And where are you now? Make that hash mark for where you were 7 weeks ago. Now, let's go all the way back here to middle school math. Let's kind of graph what you just did. So take the hash mark from where you were at the beginning on that horizontal line and take it on the vertical line and join them together. Okay, you got that? Now look where your lines intersect, which quadrant they intersect in. The flexibility or freedom to do whatever you want without regard to your best interest or self-care can lead to overeating and inactivity. On the other extreme, Rigid adherence to food or exercise plan may improve your health, but comes at a high price. So think about how much energy and time it takes to be so focused on that at the exclusion of everything else. So what happens for a lot of people is that they can't maintain that rigidity for a very long time to any plan that feels harsh or restrictive. So what happens is they may shift back and forth between the overeating and restrictive eating cycle, eat, repent, repeat. There may be rigid thoughts, but because you can't maintain that rigidity for a long time, you wind up neglecting yourself. It becomes very all or nothing. This neglects your physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual well-being and leads to guilt, shame, and ultimately defeat. Maybe you found yourself in the restrictive eating quadrant. You're super focused on self-care, you're super rigid, and really the point of what we've been doing is to try to have self-care, but be flexible about it. We're doing it in a way that gives us freedom and flexibility. So you strive to take good care of yourself while giving yourself the flexibility to adapt your eating and exercise patterns to fit your personal preferences and allow yourself to adjust to your changing circumstances. That's really what's meant when we're eating instinctively. We wind up in this quadrant of instinctive eating because it's sustainable. We don't have these rigid lines that we have to follow all the time. There's more explanation about this in your book, but I hope you take some time to think about where you were and where you are now. And if appropriate, what areas you still need to be working on. Maybe you're still kind of rigid in your thinking, or maybe you're enjoying your freedom so much that you've kind of become overly flexible. Or maybe you need to enjoy this freedom for a little while, but eventually begin to think about how to set a little more boundaries for yourself so you can begin to take care of yourself a little bit better. I'm just going to go through these real briefly, so feel free, sit back, just close your eyes and listen if you want. So why? Why do I eat? I am in charge of my eating, physical activity, and self-care. I am mindful of my physical and emotional needs and do my best to meet them appropriately. I am aware of what I'm experiencing in the present moment, so I can respond instead of reacting mindlessly. When do I eat? Whenever I feel like eating, I pause to ask, am I hungry? I use my hunger and fullness signals to guide me about when, what, and how much to eat. When I feel like eating, even though I'm not hungry, I recognize an opportunity is present to meet my true needs. What do I eat? I eat to meet my needs for fuel, nourishment, and enjoyment. When I'm hungry, I ask 3 questions. What do I want? What do I need? And what do I have? I choose from all foods freely, using balance, variety, and moderation. I eat what I love without guilt, deprivation, or binging. How do I eat? I pause to become aware of what is happening in the present moment. I eat mindfully with intention and attention. I pay attention to the effects of my choices to guide my future decisions without judgment. I nourish my body, mind, heart, and spirit through mindful eating and mindful living. How much do I eat? I eat with the intention of feeling better when I'm done than I did when I started. I eat to feel good, not to be good. And when I eat too much, I turn the situation into a learning experience by noticing how I feel physically and emotionally without judgment. Where do I invest my energy? I am physically active to give me the stamina, strength, and flexibility to live my life fully. I am aware of my thoughts, my feelings, my actions. I build a self-care buffer zone. I practice balance, variety, and moderation in the way that I live. I do what I love, and I love what I do. So how will you use your energy you have now to create the big life you crave? How are you going to use the energy from the fuel you consume to live your life? Think of one way that you will use your energy to create the big life that you crave. Write it down in your workbook. Take a moment to express some gratitude for the experience of being here and the opportunity you've had to learn how to take better care of yourself, to acknowledge the changes you've made throughout this journey, no matter how small or big. Thank yourself for investing your time and energy and money in doing something positive for yourself, and to give yourself the opportunity to take small steps in the direction that you want to go. This is a lifelong process. So use every opportunity to learn more about yourself and why, when, what, how, and how much you eat and where you invest your energy. So our final workshop wrap-ups, you have been given lots of new tools for your life management toolbox. Now it's up to you to use them and continue your journey toward mindful eating and vibrant living. Remember, this is a process. This is not a destination. For some of you, this has already begun to click. Some of you may understand the ideas, but still have difficulty applying what you've learned. That's part of the process. You'll have challenges and even struggles at times. Perfection is not necessary. The key is to move toward flexible self-care so you can continue to learn and grow instead of giving up. Do not give up. You've chosen to do that in the past, time and time again. Remember, any small step, no matter how small it is, in the direction that you want to go is a step toward your new life. This experience is like stepping on a ladder. The rungs on a ladder were not meant for you to stand there indefinitely. You're in charge of taking the next step, so keep going. What can you do to take the next step on the ladder? Maybe you could reread your book, one chapter at a time, or reread certain sections. I mean, think about how many times you can watch a movie or read a book, and each time you take away something that you didn't notice before. This will be the same way. Maybe the first time through, you were only ready to take in part of the information. And then the next time, you might be ready to take in more information. Feel free to listen to these workshops again. They should be available to you for the next 60 days, I believe. Use your journal more consistently or start using it. There are additional resources available through Am I Hungry? Visit us at TNT and make sure you're signed up for newsletters and such to receive ongoing support and information. And if you feel like you need personalized help, please contact me for some one-on-one coaching to help you through the places that still might be little sticky points for you. I want to thank you so much for the privilege and honor of being able to guide you through this process. I really, truly hope that it has changed your life or will continue to change your life as you continue on this journey. Thank you so much. Happy living.